I either don't understand people anymore, or my mind is just refusing to dignify the stupidity. I look for and at this stuff all day, every day, and even I'm having trouble with this one. You will not believe this. Picture the scene. It's a typical Thursday morning in the Florida Keys. Yeah, it's a Florida woman story, because of course it is. 19-year-old Janiah Douglas was driving south on Card Sound Road from Homestead towards Key Largo. I've never been there, but I imagine hundreds of people doing the same every day. Miss Douglas, however, was witnessed speeding and otherwise driving recklessly by Sergeant Robert Dosh of the Monroe County Sheriff's Department. When Sergeant Dosh attempted to make a traffic stop, the young lady declined to cooperate, thus initiating a chase. None of the articles I've read about this incident indicate whether it was a high-speed chase or she just refused to stop for some time. Eventually, Miss Douglas did stop near County Road 905. When asked to explain why it took her so long to do so, she actually told Sergeant Dosh that getting arrested was, and I quote, on her bucket list since high school, end quote. Well, wish granted, smooth brain. She was charged with one felony count of fleeing and eluding police, speeding her way straight into the lead for the chosen few. Even after telling it, the story doesn't get any better. I can't, y'all. I just can't. This is ridiculous. On September 10th, 2022, the Chapman Highway Walmart in Knoxville, Tennessee was hit by a shoplifter. That's not outside the norm, I admit. Even though I no longer catch shoplifters for a living, I manage to see someone shoplifting almost every time I venture to any retail store. Walmart stores, on the whole, are hit pretty hard on an almost daily basis, but the thief in this case managed to steal a karaoke machine, some camping equipment, and 3 televisions. Whether it was all taken in one trip, I don't know, but it was certainly quite the haul regardless. Again, none of that is all that unusual. When police responded to the store, they couldn't believe what they found upon their arrival. This fine, upstanding gentleman, Donald Kirkland, a career criminal with at least 11 arrests between 2012 and 2022, tried to run, but he was quickly apprehended. Here's where the not-so-normal comes into play. What was most amazing, or bold, or stupid, take your pick, was that this smooth brain was actually selling his purloined prizes in the parking lot of the store he stole them from. Because that's where I would think to sell the merchandise I just stole. Kirkland was charged with theft of merchandise greater than $1,000, but less than $2,500. Selling the merchandise you just stole in the parking lot of the store from which you just stole it is one of the quickest ways to ensure your selection to the chosen few. The Chosen Few series is all about how the garbage sometimes takes itself out, often with little to no help from law enforcement. This story is no different, except in the way law enforcement got involved. Stick around, folks. This one's a doozy. On July 17th, 2020, Wendy Lynn Ween was surfing the interwebs, looking for something very specific, something bold that could offer her a way to put a permanent end to one of her life's biggest problems. What she found was a website that declared the business has been, and I quote, providing solutions for issues since 1920, end quote. This website offers free consultations, proclaims its users' privacy is sacrosanct, features customer testimonials extolling the service, and even proudly announces that it's in full compliance with HIPAA. Wendy liked what she saw, so much so that she created an account, filled out a service request form about the issue she needed help with, first with a pseudonym, then with her actual name, and requested a consultation with one of the nearly 18,000 field operatives the site claims to have conducting business around the world. By now, I assume you're wondering what website she was using. What website could possibly put a permanent end to her biggest problem? For those who don't already know the story and how ridiculous it actually is, the website is called rentahitman.com. It's an obviously satirical website, but Wendy clearly didn't pick up on the plain-as-day clues. Clues like being HIPAA compliant. It's not the HIPAA you're used to hearing about, however, which deals with healthcare privacy. The HIPAA the website talks about is something completely different. The Hitman Information Privacy and Protection Act of 1964. It's important to note that that phrase is spelled out on the website in clear, unadorned language. How anyone thought this was a website that actually allowed someone to hire a legitimate hitman is utterly beyond me. After she filled out and submitted the service request form, the owner of the website asked Wendy 2 questions. Do you still require our services? And would you like to meet up with a field operative? When she answered in the affirmative, the website's owner turned her information over to the Michigan State Police. A meeting with an undercover state trooper posing as a hitman was then arranged, during which Wendy offered a total of $5,000 to have her ex-husband permanently ended, with a $200 down payment. She also provided her ex-husband's home and work addresses, along with his work schedule. After handing over the down payment, Wendy Lynn Ween was immediately arrested and charged with solicitation to commit murder, and later charged with using a computer to commit a crime. In January 2022, Wendy pleaded guilty to both charges and received 7 to 20 years in prison, with credit for the 545 days she had already served between her arrest and sentencing. To believe you can hire an actual hitman from a normal website that literally anyone can access at any time is an unbelievably smooth brain move. It's just mind-boggling to me, and also immediately qualifies Wendy Lynn Ween for the chosen few. And just so you know, this will not be the last time I talk about the Rent-A-Hitman website in connection to a stupid criminal, and the next one might just be worse. On the morning of May 20th, 2020, Riverside Police responded to a commercial robbery call in which the owner reported several $100s of camera equipment had been stolen. Shortly before the call, the owner had been approached by a man looking to sell some camera equipment he had acquired. When he looked at said equipment, the owner strongly suspected it actually belonged to him. Declining the offer, the owner then hurried to his shop and discovered the break-in and theft. After calling the police, the owner quickly made his way back to the seller in an attempt to delay him until officers could arrive, but when they did, the seller immediately took off. After a short foot chase, officers apprehended the suspect in a nearby fenced-in area. When verifying the suspect's identity, it was discovered that the man, Johnny Robles, was on probation for resisting arrest, violence against the police, as well as drug and theft offenses. Color me shocked on that last one. As it turned out, old Johnny was released from jail just 2 days prior, due in part to jail overcrowding conditions, in addition to a controversial zero bail program in place at the time because of the pandemic. 2 days. Johnny lasted a whole 2 days on the street before getting himself in trouble again, proving that karma can actually be quick at times. The most ironic thing about this story is that his middle name is Angel, which is clearly unsuitable to him. But in any case, let's welcome Johnny to the chosen few. In July of 2016, police responded to a disorderly person complaint at a little after 4 a.m. in Linden, New Jersey. When they arrived on scene, they found 27-year-old Kyle Chambliss sitting in a vehicle and talking loudly on his cell phone. The officers then noticed the smell of alcohol on Mr. Chambliss and asked him to exit the vehicle. After being told to end the phone call, Chambliss became aggressive. Then he was told he was under arrest, and that's when things went weird. And when I say weird, I mean Chambliss's arrest went sideways in a way I've never heard before. Before I tell you how it went sideways, however, I want to stress that this is absolutely 100% true. In an apparent attempt to avoid arrest, Chambliss told officers he had to defecate. And, then he did. Right there. In his own pants. You cannot make this stuff up. His attempt was unsuccessful, so he resorted to using regular violence to resist arrest, striking one officer in the chest and kicking another in the leg before being pepper sprayed, then handcuffed. Kyle Chambliss was charged with resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, 2 counts of aggravated assault on a police officer, and was later found to have contempt warrants out of 3 separate New Jersey jurisdictions: Somerset County, Union County, and Bound Brook. I'm not sure I've ever heard of resisting arrest by defecation before, but one thing I am sure of is that it's a quick way to get yourself listed among the chosen few. And for the record, this Kyle Chambliss is not, I repeat, he is not the Kyle Chambliss that is or has been an adjunct professor at Camden County College. It's January 2016, El Dorado County, California. A California Department of Fish and Wildlife officer spotted a swerving vehicle occupied by 2 men and attempted to initiate a traffic stop. It did not go well. After a brief chase, the 2 men abandoned their vehicle and ran off into the frozen wilderness. They clambered down into a snow-filled canyon off of Route 50 then crossed the ice-cold American River to escape the officers pursuing them, which now included several El Dorado County deputies and some California Highway Patrol officers. After a few hours of wandering the frozen landscape, the pair came across a Forest Service officer. Although the officer wasn't close enough to effect an arrest, he managed to shout a warning to the men that they should surrender because they were in definite danger of freezing to death. His warning fell on deaf ears, however, as the fugitives ran off again. At this point, you might be wondering why the two men were so desperate to get away that they would risk freezing to death. Well, Tristan Crossland was a parolee, and his companion, Derek Diano, had 4 active arrest warrants. And to top it all off, the vehicle they were driving contained several unlicensed pharmaceuticals, as well as at least 1 firearm. An ex-con and a wanted man possessing all of that would be assured of lengthy prison terms, hence the escape attempt. Later that night, just before 9 p.m., a 911 operator received a call from Crossland, who told the operator that the 2 men were now actually worried about freezing to death and began pleading for a rescue. The El Dorado County Sheriff's Office sent elements of the SWAT team, dive team, and search and rescue teams out to find the fugitives, eventually locating them a little over 12 hours later, suffering from hypothermia and frostbite. The pair were treated at a local hospital before they were turned over to the Department of Wildlife to face several charges, including evading a peace officer, felons in possession of a firearm, obstruction, and several drug charges. One officer later said he'd never come across 2 men who were so happy to get into a warm, dry jail cell. The irony of Crossland and Diano pleading to be rescued by the same law enforcement they ran into the frozen wilderness to escape is not lost on me, and that irony is what makes them part of the chosen few. On Thursday, March 24, 2016, a Central Texas woman, Chastity Hobson, was arrested by the Granite Shoals Police Department for possession of less than 1 gram of a substance I'm not allowed to name, so let's just call it an unlicensed pharmaceutical. Her arrest was not all that unusual in and of itself. People get arrested by the thousands every day for that very thing. What was unusual, however, was how she got herself arrested. See, the Tuesday before her arrest, the Granite Shoals PD made a tongue-in-cheek Facebook post, which I'd love to quote, but I'm not willing to endanger my channel, so I'll just paraphrase the post here. If you have recently purchased various unlicensed pharmaceuticals in Central Texas, please take it to the local police or sheriff department so it can be screened with a special device. Do not use it until it has been properly checked for possible Ebola contamination. 2 days later, Ms. Hobson showed up at the Granite Shoals PD with her unlicensed pharmaceutical. Because of course she did. While I do applaud Ms. Hobson for her concern about a potentially lethal virus, I have to question her wisdom for thinking that taking her unlicensed pharmaceuticals to the police station for testing wouldn't get her arrested. By doing so, however, she definitively claimed her spot in the chosen few. For the record, I am acutely aware that some people will think this is entrapment, but it isn't even close. At no point did the police entice her to break the law. They merely provided her with a novel way to show them that she did. Meet Zachary Schmidt. In August of 2016, the then 25-year-old was cruising Interstate 78 in Pohatcong Township, New Jersey, in his white Jeep Grand Cherokee. At around 10 p.m., Mr. Schmidt activated blue emergency lights installed on his vehicle, flashed a placard emblazoned with the New Jersey State Police logo, and attempted to pull over another vehicle. Strangely enough, the other vehicle refused to stop. Why, you ask? Well, that car was being driven by an off-duty New Jersey State Trooper. After a few minutes, that trooper was able to contact a dispatcher about the situation, which led to an on-duty state trooper from the Perryville station locating and making a traffic stop of Schmidt and his faux police car. During the traffic stop, it was discovered that the placard with the New Jersey State Police logo that Schmidt was flashing as if it was a badge also had a Pennsylvania State Police logo on the other side. Chances are he either planned to cross into Pennsylvania and try something similar, or he already had and wasn't caught, although that couldn't be proven. I've seen a lot of unmarked police cars in my time. If you know what to look for, they're fairly easy to spot, but having a now retired cop as a father kinda gave me an advantage in that respect. Not once in my 30+ years of driving, however, have I seen a Jeep Grand Cherokee used as a police vehicle, marked or unmarked. I'm not saying they're not out there, just that I've never seen them. The moral of the story is don't pretend to be a cop if you aren't one, especially since the person you may try to pull over just might be an actual cop. Zachary Schmidt was arrested and charged with impersonating a public servant, and that's how Zachary Schmidt became part of the chosen few. The general public tends to believe that most crimes occur at some distance from the offender's home. Whether that's accurate or not, I'm not sure, but you'd think that committing a crime in an area where many people might know and recognize you would probably make for a very short criminal career. Personally, I'd think it would be a self-evident concept. Someone should probably have let the next contestant on The Chosen Few in on that particular concept before January 23rd, 2014, because that contestant and a bunch of friends decided it would be a good idea to rob a pizza delivery guy. Yeah, I know the pizza delivery person is a pretty easy target. They get robbed all the time. It never happened to me when I delivered for Pizza Hut, thank God, but it did happen to at least 2 of my coworkers. Not like this, though. Pizzas were ordered. Pizzas were made. Pizzas were sent out for delivery to a nearby trailer park in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. When the delivery driver arrived at the address and knocked on the door, however, he was immediately approached and surrounded by several individuals with firearms. Those individuals then proceeded to rob the driver of all the money he had on him, including his personal money and wallet. They even stole the pizzas. I mean, if you're going to rob someone, you might as well get the whole kit and caboodle, right? The delivery driver, while handing over everything he had, got a good look at a number of his assailants before those assailants fled the scene, and gave very detailed descriptions of them to responding officers. Those officers then questioned residents of the trailer park, asking if they knew anyone who fit any of those descriptions. Many of those residents pointed to the address where the pizzas were delivered. Police then found 20-year-old Michael Antonio Long, who fit one of those descriptions, living at that address. During a subsequent search of the home, the stolen pizzas, as well as the insulated bag they were carried in, were found. Long was arrested and charged with 1 count of first-degree robbery. I can find no information about any arrests of the other people involved, but more arrests were expected at the time. What kind of smooth brain orders pizza, then robs the delivery person from their own address? I know, I just answered my own question, but seriously, this isn't rocket science. I swear, every time I ask if people can get any dumber, they actually seem to be taking it as a challenge. At any rate, please welcome Michael Antonio Long to The Chosen Few. And please, like the video, share it, and subscribe or follow for more. There aren't many immutable rules to human existence. The only 2 I'm aware of, death and taxes, have been around almost since the dawn of time. I would, however, like to propose a third. Stupid people do stupid things, and they do them stupidly. Which brings us to today's contestant on The Chosen Few. Meet James Blankenship. In the early months of 2013, Jimmy and his mother had a disagreement. It was apparently bad enough that Jimmy's mother banned him from her home and property altogether. Now, I've argued with my mother on occasion, but I can't recall a time she ever banned me from her house. Granted, my mother isn't his mother, but if she's anything at all like mine, it had to be something relatively serious to catch a total ban. Flash forward to June of 2013. Jimmy and his mother still had not mended fences when she caught her son breaking into her house through a first-floor window. He hadn't been permitted in the house for at least 3 months, and according to news reports at the time, he had no possessions there to retrieve. In other words, he had no legitimate reason to be there. Upon his discovery, James beat a hasty retreat, running away through adjoining backyards. A neighbor happened to notice him and alerted police, who arrived a few minutes later and began a search for whomever the neighbor had seen. Jimmy was soon discovered hiding in a crawlspace under a nearby home and was arrested. You might be wondering how the neighbor saw him so clearly. After all, burglars are rarely seen, but if they are, they're not often recognized as such, except when they decide to make their getaway through someone's yard. Jimmy decided to break into his mother's house during the day, but not because most burglaries occur during daylight hours, statistically speaking. After he was caught, arrested, and initially charged with attempted burglary and breaking and entering, this smooth brain was dumbfounded because he actually believed a person could only be charged with burglary if the crime occurred at night. I'm not gonna lie, Jimmy seems special. When all was said and done, James Blankenship pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of breaking and entering against a homeowner's will, which was a charge I didn't even know existed, and was sentenced to 180 days in prison, with 120 days of that 180 suspended, and fined $100. I could find no information on whether or not he and his mother repaired their relationship, but that's okay, because Jimmy has a new home among the chosen few.